Good afternoon. I hope you don't mind me speaking in English. I'm afraid my Taiwanese is not so good, so hopefully you bear with me. So my name is Chris. I'm from a company based out of the UK called Quantique. We're located in London, and we've been around since 2016. There's two types of technologies I wanted to just touch on today. The main one being our quantum identity IP, and also our security platform. And we've been talking about security quite a bit this afternoon, and I know some customers are keen to get around comply with the security protocols that are coming up and the certifications required, and hopefully you'll see today that we can help you with that here at Quantique. So these are some of the industrial engagements that we have. So we deal with several partners. Some are silicon manufacturers, so some of the big microcontroller companies, and also companies who wish to make SoCs and ASICs, and also companies who are looking to take their own roots of trust and allow them to go into products and be managed across the entire life cycle of that product. And we can provide software tools, cloud-based tools, to manage that security over its lifetime. So let's have a look at what is needed today, what is actually needed out there to make sure that your product is safe when it's out in the market. So there are things like geological power struggles, which are going on at the moment. We need to protect our intellectual property as well. This is very important, that we're embedded into our products. The cost of being a victim of cyber hacks. So I'm sure you've seen in the news all these hacks that have been around, and it's costing companies an awful lot, not just in branding. And then what's very important is the regulations that are coming along. These are going to be, certainly in Europe, they're going to be active in 2024, and you're not going to be able to sell your products unless you comply with these certifications. So these are the important things about security today. So this slide is just giving you some examples of the legislation that's coming out. We're based in the UK, so we're primarily looking at those two up there. Certainly the Cybersecurity Act from Europe is quite an important one, and our products are going to help customers to comply with those security regulations without too much pain. In a lot of cases, it can be quite painful to make your product comply with these regulations. So what is the main problem with security? So here we're kind of showing you the actual channel that your product goes through as it's being manufactured. So if we start off down at the silicon level, we're looking at intellectual property that you might be putting on your silicon device. And that goes into some hardware, some maybe large SoC that it's going into. Then it will go into some kind of assembly, a PCB, and that's going to be manufactured by maybe another company. It's going to be outsourced. Then you're going to be developing software that's going to be running on your board and on your SoC. That could be handled by somebody else as well, and obviously it also needs to be injected into the board as it's going through the manufacturing channel. So these are all things that are exposing your product to attacks. Then you've got the use case, depending on what type of product you're targeting, what the application is. That may be connected to the cloud, which is what is happening with a lot of products these days. They're making use of the vast amounts of resources that are available in the cloud, certainly with analytics of data and things like that. And then your final application, which may be running in the cloud. So the main problem is protecting all these items in this long supply chain. So it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of complexity in manufacturing a device. So making security high, very high security across all this flow is very, very difficult. Now we can help with that here at Quantique, and the way we do that is by providing you with a new type of identity that can be placed into a semiconductor device. Effectively, we are providing you with a PUF, but it's actually based on quantum technology. What that means is that if you put the root of trust from us, the QDID, inside a semiconductor device, it provides that device with a unique, provable identity. And that's where security begins. When you're looking at security, to put in your product, you need to start thinking about it at the very earliest stages of the development of the product. And with QDID embedded in the semiconductor device, you're right at the start. You're actually at the manufacturing level of the silicon chip itself, because our technology takes the identity from the crystalline structure of that silicon device. So every single device is unique. And the important thing here as well is that because that identity is coming out of the silicon structure, nobody ever knows what it is, in that from that seed that we produce from our puff, you can generate a cryptographic key pair, and nobody ever knows what that private key is. In most cases, you end up having to inject a key into the device to prove its identity. That key typically has to come from somewhere else. It comes from an HSM typically, which is a secure device, but it has to be transported. And of course, the key is now in 2 places, and that's open to attack. So we're starting off with security that you put in your semiconductor device. That goes to build an SoC, which allows you to run your application and whatever product you wish to run on it. Then when that starts going down the production channel, so your chip has gone on a board, that board is now being manufactured by someone else. You're going to inject firmware into that device. That may be done at a secure programming facility for provisioning. And then, as I said, it goes to connect to the cloud, and then the actual connection or running of your application. With our technology, because you're starting at the very beginning of the semiconductor device, with identity that is completely unknown, it means you can track that identity all the way through this chain. And it means that at every single step, you're going to make sure that that product is safe and secure based on its identity. Because that's the beginning of security, is can something prove its identity? So because you don't have to inject keys early on, and that means that the key isn't sitting somewhere else, it's in that silicon chip from the crystalline structure, it means you have this secure line. So for those of you unfamiliar, what is a puff? So it's a physically unclonable function. It's a device that can basically extract unique identity from a physical property. And in our case, it actually extracts identity from the crystalline structure. We actually measure quantum tunneling currents across silicon oxide layers of transistors, which means that the actual identity that comes out is coming from a very high entropy, and in theory couldn't be even calculated by a medium-sized quantum computer. So it means your device is also future-proof. This is quite a unique puff in the industry. We're calling it a second-generation puff. If you are familiar with puffs, these are the type of puffs you would see today. They're typically based on either SRAM or flash technologies. The SRAM version, basically what that is that when you apply power to an SRAM device, interestingly, it can tend to come up and power up with the cells in a similar state every single time. They're fairly random, and not high entropy, but they are fairly random. But it is reasonably repeatable. And that can give you an identity for that device based on the actual SRAM itself. Then there are other technologies that actually use flash cells. And what they do is they actually apply a high voltage across the silicon oxide layer of the flash cells, and they create this, due to dipole mismatch, they create this channel down through the transistor. And if you do that with a pair, you can determine whether there's a 1 or a 0 depending on how that device was injured. But you're actually physically injuring the actual flash cell. So these are the two types that are typically around today. So what are the limitations of these? Typically, they tend to only provide a very small amount of material for you to create keys from. So you have one key typically, and then you can actually spawn other keys from that. But of course, that's done through some kind of pseudo-random number generator, so they are in fact correlated to the original key. The cells don't always start up in the same state, as I mentioned earlier, and in particular with SRAM puffs. They're about 30% error rate on those, which is a very high error rate, which means you need quite a lot of what we call helper data, which is data that helps ensure that the identity that you're extracting from that peripheral is the same every time. So you tend to need a lot of other memory to hold this helper data. The reliability and performance isn't great. The randomness can be poor, and also it can change depending on how you read the data out of the cell. If you read it in columns, you will get a different code from if you read it at rows. So it can change from that viewpoint. It's questionable resistance to side channel attacks, certainly with SRAM puffs, because they tend to, well, because they're based on current, they are susceptible to remnants attacks and photon emission attacks if you skim the back of the silicon off. It's not self-contained IP, because typically you would need to use some other peripheral that's in the SoC to actually produce your puff. So obviously SRAM for the SRAM case and flash for flash. So you're actually depending on another peripheral in the device. You're kind of making use, so it's kind of like a compromise that you're making use of something that's already in the device. With our technology, we've actually designed it from day one as a security element. It doesn't use any other peripherals, it is a security element. Relatively long setup times. It can take a while to actually get the pattern out of the device, and you do need, in the case of the flash, a larger pump to actually injure the flash cells. So let's have a look at a QDID. So this is a hardware IP block, a macro that we can provide you, and it then provides you with this root of trust, the actual unique identity of your device. It's based on quantum tunneling current, as I said. We actually do measure the quantum tunneling current across transistors, which is based on two things: the thickness of the transistor and also the interaction of the atoms across that silicon oxide layer. So it is, in fact, something that a quantum computer would be difficult to calculate and predict. We manufactured it in several nodes. You can see some examples here, 65, 55, and 22 nanometers at both Global Foundries and TSMC. So it's patented. It's been demonstrated to be highly reliable and manufacturable. So what this does is it provides you what we call this zero trust supply chain. Thank you, sorry about that. So it means that you don't have to trust anybody in the channel that we talked about earlier. So you don't need to trust the company that's putting your semiconductor device on the PCB. You don't have to trust in the company that's injecting the software into your device. You can carry on doing this manufacture if you have something like a QDID inside, and every single stage will be using the QDID, its identity, its provable identity, to ensure that you're secure with whatever function you're actually executing on that product. So there's no secret key injection. That's one of the key parts of the QDID. So you don't have to generate these keys, cryptographic keys, and program them into the device, typically during provisioning. They are created from the silicon device itself. You can use them to authenticate your IP, authenticate your firmware as well, and of course this is going to protect your software IP. On the zero trust, on the IoT security itself, so this is typically targeted at IoT devices which are connected. We have, with our software security platform, which I haven't touched on just yet, but that has this built-in certificate authority capability, so you don't have to go out and buy external certificates to register with your IoT devices as they're going through this manufacturing process. Our platform ensures that you have secure onboarding to any cloud service provider that you're going to use for your connected device. We can provision devices on the fly, and we can obviously, with the QDID, have firmware attestation to ensure that you have got the right firmware running on the device. And a software platform can provide you with the usual capabilities that you'd want with some kind of life management tool. So it can do firmware over-the-air updates, certificate renewal, revocation, etc. So the QDID, along with our other product, which I'll talk about later, can provide you with the security across the whole supply chain. So where does the QDID fit? What actually does it look like? So this is an example of the QDID integrated into maybe an SoC that is using an Andes core. Here you can see that we have next to the core what we could call a trusted execution environment. That includes lots of other cryptographic and security capabilities, such as key generation, maybe some secure storage that you want in there, and you can see that the QDID is embedded in there as well. It forms part of that trusted execution environment. That's actually where it would sit. A couple of use cases in a gateway that may be communicating with a lot of other peripherals, maybe over LoRaN or Bluetooth. That gateway would be connected to a network, and that's where you'd want to ensure that any firmware updates, or that's the most secure part in the channel, and that's probably where you would want to put your Andes core along with your QDID root of trust. Something we're seeing a lot of lately is where it could be included in a Wi-Fi module. So if you're communicating with a cloud service provider, you need quite a lot of resources on your microcontroller, especially if it's something like a Cortex-M style microcontroller. You need TCP/IP stacks, TLS stacks, and it's quite complex to talk to a cloud service provider. What you can do, however, is you could put all that effort and pain onto a Wi-Fi module that has all the software included in it to do that onboarding communication. And here I've just partitioned the Wi-Fi module from the host processor. Oh, it's coming up. From the host controller from the customer, and they only need to communicate to the Wi-Fi module over a very simple bus, typically a UART or an SPI. They may not be the most secure, but it means that all the security is handled by the Wi-Fi module itself. So the actual host application by the customer is not as complex. And this is often a popular one we're seeing at the moment. And then here's just another example, a smart city, smart industry. There's also areas where we're seeing these kind of products with an Andes core and a secure element with QDID inside integrated. So is a device secure after root of trust is assigned to the hardware? Yes, and that's brings me to our QuarkLink. So this is our platform, security platform that runs in the cloud. If you come to the desk, I can give you a demonstration. And this platform uses the root of trust in your hardware throughout the journey of that device and throughout its life cycle. The QuarkLink is a flexible device which attests the device that you want to connect to a cloud service provider through the use of the QDID, and it basically onboards your device to a cloud service provider very simply. Simplicity is the key word here. It's very easy to configure and get that device connected to a cloud service such as AWS or Azure or whoever you want to use, simply and quickly. And it does it at scale as well. So if you have thousands of IoT devices that you want to connect to the cloud and manage, then this platform is for you. We have a free trial. If you want to actually have a play with the QuarkLink, do a 30-day free trial. We give you a piece of hardware, one of these M5 stacks, and you can have 30 days of playing with onboarding that device to AWS. Come and talk to us at the bench if you're interested in a trial. So in summary, with an Andes core and crypto Quantique providing you with the root of trust, and a QuarkLink as part of your lifecycle management platform, we can provide you with highly optimized processor cores from Andes, of course, which you've seen today. Lots of software stacks which you may need to provide, build your product. The root of trust, of course, incorporating quantum-driven technology, state-of-the-art technology for your identity, crypto-based security platform, which again is post-quantum safe, and of course professional ID from your tools. So this enables you to manufacture and build secure, high-performance RISC-V technology products. You don't have to trust any of those partners in the supply line. That's the important thing. You don't have to trust your programming houses, your board builders, your test houses with the QDID base inside the device. Easy to use onboarding through the QuarkLink, and without having to have being an expert in security. That's one of the things we try to do with the QuarkLink, make it simple to use, and you don't need to understand about certificates and keys and all that complexity. So with that, I just want to sign off. Thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to you guys. Thanks.